Every morning at exactly 11:58 a.m., my dog begins tugging furiously at my baby's blanket, growling at the empty air. No matter how many times I scold or restrain him, he won't stop until the clock strikes noon, and something finally reveals itself the first days. I blamed everything but the obvious. My dog, Jasper, had always been gentle, so calm that he'd earned the nickname Old Soul. But around the third morning, I noticed him sitting rigidly in the nursery doorway, watching the crib with intensity I'd never seen. His ears pinned flat against his skull, and a low growl rumbled in his chest. At first, I thought he'd caught sight of a moth or some speck of dust floating in the light. But then he crept forward, step by deliberate step, and took the corner of the baby's soft blue blanket gently in his teeth. I thought it was strange, but not alarming. Maybe he just wanted to play, or maybe he was trying to help me by making the bed. But the look in his eyes wasn't playful. It was desperate. When I reached to pull the blanket away from him, Jasper growled louder, his body tense and shaking as he tugged in short, frantic jerks. I was startled enough to back away, watching in confusion as he pulled harder. The blanket moved, gathering around some invisible shape I couldn't see. It was as if he were fighting to pull it out of something's grasp, though the crib looked perfectly empty. I bent closer, peering into the crib, half expecting to find a doll or toy that had gotten tangled up. There was nothing, no hidden object, no stray cord. Just my peacefully sleeping baby, and Jasper locked in an invisible tug-of-war. When I finally managed to pry the blanket from his mouth, he whimpered and circled the crib, refusing to leave. That first day, I thought maybe I was overtired. But it happened again the next morning and the one after that. Always the same time. 11:58 a.m. Jasper would fix his gaze on the crib, his whole body quivering. He'd seize the blanket and tug with all the strength in his jaws, as though he was trying to rescue my baby from something only he could feel. And each time, the blanket would lift and shift on its own, just enough to make my stomach drop in cold disbelief. I began to dread the mornings, because I knew whatever it would be back by the second week. The pattern had set in so precisely that I could time it down to the minute. I would glance at the clock, 11:57, and feel my pulse quicken. Jasper would already be standing in the nursery doorway, tail stiff, teeth bared in silent warning. The baby always seemed to sense something too. Even in the deepest sleep, his little body would start to twitch and tense. Then, just before the second hand swept to noon, he would open his eyes and scream. It wasn't an ordinary baby cry. It was a high, strangled wail, like he was being pinched or suffocated. The first time it happened, I nearly fell over the crib rail in my rush to scoop him up. His tiny hands were locked around the blanket, knuckles white, as though he was trying to hold on to it, or maybe trying to keep something from pulling it away. I pulled the blanket free, certain it must be caught on something. But again, nothing was there. The crib was as neat and empty as ever. I tried everything I could think of to break the cycle. I changed the bedding, scrubbed every inch of the nursery, and even moved the crib to another wall. Nothing made any difference. Every day, the cry began exactly on schedule, and Jasper would leap forward, snapping at the blanket as if battling an invisible thief. I started leaving my phone propped on the dresser to record, hoping I could capture some clue. But every time I reviewed the footage, the screen flickered to static at 11:58 and stayed black until precisely 12:01. Even the audio would fail, cutting out the moment Jasper began to growl. The predictability made it worse. I began to dread those final minutes before noon, pacing the hallway, listening to the clock ticking down like a countdown to something I couldn't name. When the wailing started, I could feel the hair rise on my arms, as if the air itself changed. Some days, it felt colder. Other days, the scent in the room turned metallic and sour. It was as if the entire house held its breath, waiting for whatever came crawling out of the unseen. And with every passing day, the crying grew louder. Yesterday, I made up my mind that I wouldn't leave the room. I was tired of feeling helpless, of standing just outside the doorway while my baby screamed and Jasper fought whatever was there alone. I sat in the nursery, clutching the baby monitor in one hand, even though I knew it never worked during the noon hour. Jasper pressed against my legs, trembling so hard I felt in my bones. The clock on the wall ticked relentlessly forward. 11:57, 11:58. My throat tightened. I told myself I was ready, but my body knew better. At 11:59, the air changed. It thickened somehow, pressing in against my skin, dense and cold like a deep cellar. The smell came next. Something damp and sour, a reek I can only describe as old water and rust. My baby, who had been sleeping, startled awake with a shrill, terrified cry. He thrashed in the crib, eyes wide, reaching for me. Before I could move, the blanket lifted as if a gust of wind had blown beneath it. But there was no breeze, no open window. It hovered, folding in slow, deliberate movements, and then began to drift over his face. I lunged forward, heart hammering. Jasper leapt with me, teeth bared in a furious snarl. As I grabbed for the blanket, the shape began to materialize. At first, it looked like a ripple in the air, as if the heat from an oven were distorting the space above the crib. But the shimmer darkened, gathering density, until I saw a shape that nearly stopped my heart, a suggestion of long arms and a bowed, featureless head. The blanket twitched in my grip, pulled by hands I couldn't see, and my baby's screams pitched higher, raw and panicked. Jasper launched himself at the shape, snapping and barking with a desperation I'd never heard. For one terrible moment, the figure seemed to lean closer to me, as if it were studying my face. My vision blurred with tears. I yanked the blanket away, clutching my baby to my chest. The thing recoiled, folding it on itself until it vanished into a shimmer, and then the air went still. Noon had passed. I don't know what it was. I don't know why it comes. But I am sure one thing. It knows that I saw it. And I don't think it plans to hide any longer sometimes. The instincts of those who love us, whether human or animal, perceive dangers we refuse to see. Trusting their warnings can mean the difference between safety and tragedy, because not every threat is visible and not every unseen force will remain hidden forever